There we go. Tennessee with a victory. And, excuse me, certainly not the way the Vols would have wanted to do it last year, but they did it. The Vols championship hopes in all shape, form, and fashion stay alive, and they do still control their own destiny. But what kind of a destiny will they have with this offense without Brew McCoy? That oh my, did not look like the offense that Tennessee fans are used to seeing last year. So thanks for joining us. The Big Wrap brought to you by our friends at Harrell Group Security Solutions and our friends at Hemp House Chattanooga. We'll have more on both of those fine sponsors. But Caleb, let's begin with this. Did you ever think you would see a Josh Heupel team win a game like that? Please hit like and subscribe as we break down the Vols' victory, as close as it could be, against Texas A&M. It just felt like Tennessee, Caleb, was going to find a way to let that one slip away, but it's not the Vols of the past, and they managed to hold on to the victory. Your thoughts?
Obviously, the story of the game is Tennessee's defensive line, but let's first give our guy Josh Ward some credit. He said on Thursday, what was one of his bold predictions? That this weekend Heupel would break his streak of never winning a game without scoring 30 points. He barely broke 20, and he hit right at 20, and he wins 20-13. I was shocked by this. And honestly, guys, you can't say enough we were talking all year about how the defense could be improved. And I was saying low key, the secondary has been much better than last year. No one was really talking about it. The whole defensive unit just played superb tonight. I mean, they just played incredible. And by the way, the pass rush that we saw in the game, Max Johnson was under pressure all game. And if a lesser quarterback would have been sacked about 7 times. The only reason he was only sacked twice is because Max Johnson, I think you got to give him credit. He handled the pressure really, really well, given all the low throws and given what Tennessee was bringing. Tennessee played superb. Special teams, I mean, I'm going to have a post up a little later. Turning point of the game, a punt to the half-yard line, and then D. Williams runs back a punt for a touchdown. That punt return touchdown, that was still Josh Heupel. Not his offense, but Dave, he didn't go for the block when every coach in America would go for the block in that situation. And if you watch it, he dropped his players back, and A&M was expecting the block and was caught off guard on the return. It was brilliant coaching.
No, I agree. And when we talk about what Tennessee was able to do, the defensive front, it was all about creating pressure for the most part. And James Pierce Jr. not only creating pressure, but in pass coverage at one point continues just to emerge as one of the best edge rushers, edge defenders in not just the SEC, but college football.
He does. He was incredible in this game, and it didn't always show up on the stat sheet, although he did have a sack, but he hurried the quarterback 3 times. He was all in Max Johnson's face. And again, I mean, I want to say this multiple times. You got to tip your cap to Max Johnson, Dave. I mean, he played his butt off given how much pressure he was under consistently in this game. And he should have been sacked 7 times. And he single-handedly is the reason he wasn't sacked more. And James Pierce Jr. was a huge part of that. This guy's a potential superstar. I mean, I didn't like Leonard Little vibes that people were talking at the beginning of the year because I just think that's such high expectations, but they were right. I mean, Fred White was right. I mean, if he stays healthy, this might be the best edge rusher Tennessee has had in a long, long time, and that includes Derek Barnett.
I agree because I think he's more flexible to be able to drop into pass coverage than Barnett, who I've got the utmost respect for. So let's hit up a couple of things that are on the message board, and let's start with Candy. Candy, thanks for joining us. I love Candy. That's because Milton is struggling with passing. Thank God for running backs and defense. Absolutely. Milton is still struggling with passing, and he made a couple of plays on the ground with his feet, which is good. We all know he needs to do that. But that came after the interception for the most part, which was a bad read. That's the scary thing. We've been talking about Milton's inaccuracies, and it's one thing to not be able to throw it through the tire hanging from the tree. It's another thing to think that the tire is a receiver and it's a defender. That's at least 2, maybe 3 times where he's made a bad read. So if you combine that with an inaccurate arm, man, you got something kind of scary going on there. He needs to clean that up because the interception in the end zone is just unforgivable. Didn't read the safety, and he knows that.
It's inexcusable. Gary Danielson was trying to is usually as diplomatic as they come. And he sat there and said, that's what you learn in elementary school football. Like Pee-wee football, you learn to not make that throw when the safety is over there like that. You've got to see that safety if you're a 6th-year senior playing college football. And I couldn't understand it. Dave, the worst play Milton made for me, though, was, do you remember on the first drive, Tennessee had a free play after Texas A&M jumped off sides and Milton's running, and he's got the first down, and he runs out of bounds before the first down. And
yeah, I saw that. It reminded me of the Ole Miss play. I know I bring that up way too often for some of our fans, but I'm sorry. It just completely reminded me of that play.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the yard marker's right there. How do you not see the yard marker? You got to know that you got to get that first down, right? I mean, you got to know that.
Yep, I agree. Click like and subscribe. We greatly appreciate that. If you haven't done that to this point, we want you to do so. The big wrap brought to you by Harrell Group Security Solutions and the Hemp House. Harrell Group Security Solutions, leadership, experience, specialization, addressing problems through unique mission-specific mitigation techniques, making your children safer, one school at a time. Working with private schools now, we want to work with public schools. So go to your school administrator and say, call Harrell Group Security Solutions, harrellgrp.com, harrellgrp.com. And another note on our message board, things that I was definitely going to hit on, and that's Nimrod. Nimrod needs more playing time. We have to at least look at Nico. Milton was awful. Well, I was going to get to that if Tennessee managed a way to lose this game, even beforehand. But as far as Nimrod, I saw flashes of athletic ability that make me think that he can fill in for a Brew McCoy. I'm not saying he's going to be the same guy, but if Brew McCoy is an A receiver, then I think Nimrod can be a B receiver. Just flashes. The one time he got wide open, the ball was underthrown by Milton. Should have been pass interference anyway, but I've seen more of Nimrod today than I saw through the entire season, and I like the way he looks. I really do.
I became a fan of Nimrod on Milton's first completion. That was a bad throw by Milton. It was thrown behind Nimrod, and Nimrod made the catch. And I've been saying one of my knocks on Tennessee's receivers this year so far, Dave, has been, while Milton's not as accurate as Hooker, these receivers are 4 and 5 stars. So you expect them to make catches on balls that aren't accurately thrown or maybe thrown too hard. And I hadn't seen them do that. That was the first time all year I saw a receiver do that outside of Squirrel White's 50-yard catch from South Carolina 2 weeks ago. That was a great catch by Nimrod. And he had a couple of more, and you're right. That was a pass interference, and it was an underthrown ball. By the way, the only reason it was a pass interference is because it was an underthrown ball. If it's thrown in stride, it's a touchdown. Easily. No questions asked. And so I'm with you. I want to see more of Nimrod. And talking about receivers, I mean, look, we got to be honest. As Milton is struggling, but Ramel Keaton's having a bad year. He's really, I don't know. I don't want to say regressed because it's just a few plays, but this is the second time he dropped a surefire touchdown pass this year, wide open.
Yeah, see, I never was in love with him last year. I know he had the one diving catch. I can't remember which game that was. Caleb, you probably do. Yeah, I mean, he had the one diving catch that was fantastic, but I never saw flashes of him that he would be an incredible receiver. To me, he was always going to be a complimentary receiver. Post on our message board because this is all about you. We want to get your comments up and get your thoughts. Travis says Ramel Keaton had a tough game. He did. I don't put, air quotes, the second drop on him because I thought it was behind him. Football purist will say you should catch every ball that hits you in the hands. But I've said it before, Joe Milton throws a heavy ball. And if that slant's not on the money and out in front of you, it's coming hard and it's going to be really difficult to catch.
Yeah, Joe Milton, that's one of the biggest knocks on him. However, he actually had touch on one of the passes, and it was dropped, and it wasn't on Keaton. It was on Dante Thornton. That turned into a tip pass to McCall Castles. There was a nice touch on that ball, Dave. And Dante Thornton, the one time they put him in the game, what does he do? He drops it. And goes right off his chest.
And that would have
And
been an easy catch for a touchdown. Travis beat me to it. I just asked the question. And Jimmy Himes, if you didn't read or listen to him, he's with us each and every Wednesday as we broadcast live at 10 a.m. via YouTube, wherever you stream. And Jimmy said, play D. Williams on offense, get him the ball on offense. They didn't get him the ball on offense. He ends up perhaps saving the game for Tennessee with the punt return, that whole special teams exchange. But Caleb, I just don't think it's in Josh Heupel's mindset to play multiple receivers on his offense. He stuck to the main three last year. I think he's going to stick to the main three this year. And that's just the way he rolls. And you've said you like that. And I think you have to do that because of high tempo. You don't want to sub. But, man, it would seem like you could get D. Williams. It seems like you could get him involved somehow. He's just too explosive.
he is. He's very explosive. Again, that touchdown was more than just about D. Williams, although D. Williams did most of the work. Texas A&M wasn't prepared for punt coverage because they thought Tennessee was coming for the block. And which, by the way, I think unless it's on a field goal to win the game, I feel like you should never go for blocks on punts. I feel like the probabilities, I think you're much more likely to get a rough in the punter than you are an actual blocked punt, always 100% of the time. But yep. I think that was on that. But yeah, I get the D. Williams on offense, but I just can't. Squirrel White is that playmaker. Squirrel White can do what D. Williams can do with the ball in his hands.
I don't know. Here's where I would put. I don't think he knows a bunch of offensive plays, so you can't put him in for a drive that's beginning at your own 20. But if you have a drive that begins at the opponent's 35 or 40, and he knows 2 or 3 plays, I would certainly consider that. Gary Harper said, I've been on the Milton train, but officially stepped off. Should have used the bye week to install Nico. I said it even before that. I said he should have played significant snaps against UTSA. He didn't, Caleb. Tennessee, I've told you in the offseason, and I hate it when people say I told you so, they're in love with Joe Milton. Tennessee's coaches are not going to make a change barring a disastrous couple of outings or an injury. Caleb, I'm telling you from inside sources, it is not going to happen.
Yeah, they're in love with Joe Milton, and at the end of the day, they're 5-1 halfway through the season with Joe Milton as their starter. Whatever you want to say about that, they're 5-1. And what are you going to do? Yes, you got Alabama next week. You're probably going to lose that game. And then you got, is it Kentucky the week after that, I believe, on October the 28th? Okay, if Joe Milton loses to Kentucky, then you start having a conversation. But you're not going to bench him for losing to Alabama. You're definitely not benching him after beating Texas A&M. Guys, Texas A&M is on a pure talent for talent is better than Tennessee at every position almost. If you go by recruiting rankings, they are. They have more talent across the board. And so this is, I know what y'all want to say about Texas A&M coming off a bye, being on the road. But the only reason Texas A&M should have lost this game is a coaching difference. That's it, quite honestly. And so whatever you want to say about Milton, he did win the game. And I know people are going to say he only threw for 100 yards. And he made a lot of elementary mistakes you can't make. But he also did run for 34 yards. And I think if he uses his legs more, there were a couple of runs that he finally ran the way we wanted to see him run, Dave. And what I mean by that is like he ran hard, he took the right angles, and he fought for yards afterwards. And if he does more of that, maybe his passing game will actually get a little bit better. Right now, no one's respecting Milton as a runner because he doesn't do it a lot.
No. Absolutely agree. If you're on the message board, we want to hear your thoughts. Pardon me, want to make it about you as Caleb, I'm playing a little bit hurt here, fighting a little bit of a cold, but I'll be just fine. Elias brings up an interesting point that I hadn't thought about. Keaton feels like he's been in his head badly since that drop versus UVA. Boy, if that's stringing on this long, then it's time to see a sports psychologist.
He's had 2 touchdown catches since then. I mean, if that's in his head, then that's a problem. It shouldn't be in his head. I mean,
go ahead.
The only thing I'll say is that touchdown pass that he dropped, I think the wind sailed that ball a little bit, and he still should have called it. Don't get me wrong, but I think he kind of was. I don't think it was exactly where he thought it would be, but you should still catch it.
No. Again, another comment about Squirrel. saying that, see, and I kind of thought that Squirrel is a guy that played better as the number 2 guy. Well, he is the number 1 guy as far as slot receiver. I don't think Squirrel White is a guy, and number 1 receiver means dictate coverage. I've said this before. It's not just the guy who catches the most passes. It's a guy who dictates coverage. Squirrel White's not going to be that from physical presence. I mean, that's not him, but he's going to take advantage of things underneath if somebody else can help dictate coverage. Brew was supposed to do that. We'll see if Nimrod can.
Yeah, that's the big thing with Squirrels. Squirrel's supposed to be this year's Jalen Hyatt, but that was dependent on Brew being in there. Look, I like the way Nimrod played, even more than you, honestly. I'm really, really high on him. Now, people criticize. There was one play where the only on the runs to the outside, people talked about Brew McCoy being missed for the blocking on the outside. Nimrod was fine. The only penalty in that game from blocking on the outside was Caleb Webb.
Very true. Elias says, I don't know that we have that guy right now. You're referring to the number 1 receiver. I don't think you do. But again, I saw flashes of Nimrod. Maybe I'm more optimistic than most. Jalen Wright. There were a couple of times, and I mean this is a huge compliment, that Jalen Wright was in the game. And I think Vernon Lundquist had a problem with it too. Thought that Jalen Wright was Dylan Sampson. That tells you something about Jalen Wright's ability to make people miss, which he relied on too much previously. But here's what defenses have seen. They've seen a tougher Wright trying to run through would-be tacklers. So now they're getting beat by the quick moves. And that's something that he's going to continue to benefit on. Again, hit like and subscribe. We certainly appreciate that. But I like the way that Tennessee is going about these running backs. Well, I think Wright is the number 1, and there's no question about that. He is, and it was Brad Nessler, not Vernon Lundquist. Sorry about that. I think that Jalen Wright is clearly the number 1, but I do like the fact that they're willing to continue to work Small and Sampson in and figure out who has the hot hand. Reminds me of the Hayden Garner-Graham days.
We got to give a lot of credit to Tennessee's run game today because, Dave, we questioned all year if Tennessee could do it with Cooper Mays healthy against a good defensive line and a good front seven. Well, Texas A&M has arguably one of the best arguably the best front seven in the SEC. True, Edgerrin Cooper got hurt in this game, but that still doesn't take away. They ran for 240 yards. I mean, that is a huge deal. You got to give them a ton of props. And I think Tennessee, look, this is going to be their offense the rest of the year. Now, there is an issue. And the left side of the line is still a problem. John Campbell is raw, and so he's going to make a mistake here or there at left tackle, and they don't have a left guard. Don't come to me that Ollie Lane just didn't have time to prepare at left guard. He had 2 weeks now, and he played horrible in this game. He single-handedly killed a drive by himself.
Yeah, and Smoky Mountain Red brings up a good point. Maybe you and I disagree on a little bit, Caleb. You said Squirrel White can bring what D. Williams brings. I think they're similar athletes. I think D, though, as Smoky Mountain Red says, D breaks ankles, Squirrel outruns them. I do think D is a little shiftier than Squirrel.
Heupel's not. Yeah, but I feel like Heupel's system doesn't as much involve. That's having the ball in open space and making a play. There are not a lot of plays in Heupel's system that calls for that. If you know what I mean. I know there are screens and things like that, but there's not like that play where you try to get the receiver the ball on a catch 5 yards down the field, and then they try to make plays in open space and become a massive threat. It's more running, or you hope, or a quick slant, or you hope you beat the defense over the top.
Go ahead and get on board now. We want to hear from you, and you can post on the message board, and we'll pull up your comments and address those. So we appreciate the people that are online now. Go ahead and click that like button, comment away, and we'll go through them all before we're done. It was just a monstrous win for Tennessee with Alabama on the horizon and the ability to keep championship hopes alive. I know it seems unlikely that Tennessee would beat Georgia at this point, but everything they wanted to play for is still on the table as of mid-October. What more can you ask for after a Florida fiasco? Yeah,
exactly. Tennessee being 5-1 going into Alabama, that wouldn't have been the goal. They would have wanted to be 6-0, but hey, being 5-1, you're right. They're where they want to be at this point. And I think that Look, the Florida game was a fluke game. We know everything that went into that, but with this Texas A&M win, they're going to Alabama. Dave, you might as well be undefeated. The Florida loss isn't going to mean anything at the end of the year.
No, I agree. Totally agree. Saban is going to force Joe to throw, might be a disaster for us. That, according to Travis, that's exactly what Nick Saban is going to do. And
Does
I
anybody
would
have faith in
think
Jalen
there's a good.
Milroe?
What's that?
Jalen Milroe from the other side, though. I don't have a lot of faith in him.
But defensively, here's what I'm going to do. I'm to the point where I'm not scared enough of Joe Milton's deep arm, where I'm not even playing deep anymore. I'm going to start to roll defensive backs up and take everything away and get more involved in the running game. If you didn't officially know what Tennessee's offense was a month ago, I felt like this is the direction it was going. This is what they are. They are a running football team who is going to have to make a couple of plays here and there. And when I say running football team, I'm including screens. Those are extended runs, Caleb. That's exactly what this team is. And there's part of me that says, hey, they should play Nico and they should have had him more ready. I've written that before. There's another part of me that has a lot of respect for Josh Heupel in being able to do something completely different than what he wants to, because this is like a triple option offense going to a run and shoot, Caleb. This ain't easy what they're doing.
No, yeah, I said it on Tuesday. This is Josh Heupel. He's literally Steve Spurrier at South Carolina instead of Steve Spurrier at Florida, and he's accepting it. And you have to give him credit for that. And look, Tennessee's moving the ball. They got into Texas A&M territory consistently in this game. I mean, you take away the Ollie Lane holding penalties on one drive, the Javonte Spraggins face mask, which turned a touchdown drive into a field goal drive, the Joe Milton interception, the 4th and 3 where they kicked a long field goal and probably should have gone for it. I mean, you're looking at how many times Tennessee how many points did they leave on the board? They left more points on the board than Texas A&M did. I'll tell you that.
Yep. You may be new to the program. If you're just seeing us, hit that subscribe button. Do it now, and we're going to answer your questions on the message board. We have Smoky Mountain Red saying we have some stubborn, good coaches. That is so true. Stubborn, good. They don't often go hand in hand, but they are stubborn. They are absolutely going to do what they're going to do, and that includes not going to Nico, and they're not going to. An anonymous trucker, you can use your real name, got to get Ia Maleava involved in Tuscaloosa next week. Wow. I know Casey Clausen made his first start against Alabama, but that was a way different scenario. Had Tennessee lost, I was going to make the argument that you've got to go Nico from this point forward. At least get him a couple of real series in the first half against whoever, Alabama. I'd probably name him the starter against Alabama, but that would be a very aggressive move considering you have championships to play for. You got a senior quarterback.
Yeah, you're not making the change at this point. You're going with Joe. You're going to be the running offense with Joe. Now, what I will say is just change up the offense. You just said it. Run the triple option offense. Bring it back, Dave. Run it from the shotgun. Have Joe Milton back there with Jabari Small and Jalen Wright, and just have him make reads each time. I mean, you might as well at this point, because I think they ran the option play one time in this game, and it was a huge gain. They could do more of that, and Joe Milton is big enough to take those hits.
I love Travis. Travis saying, my goodness, our running backs are the Hooker show of the NCAA. Simply the best. Greatly appreciate that. Thank you. As we're live each and every week. What's that?
You point out how stubborn good the coaches are, and I agree. I'm going to point out how stubborn bad Jimbo Fisher is, because Tennessee should be thanking him for this game too. Burning a timeout to save a 3rd and 11 when you know you're going to need that timeout late in the game, that was a massive fail. And then on top of that, the end of the half, you got 3 timeouts left, and you played for halftime.
Yeah.
Like,
it is but you know, it's not even that to me that would bother me if I were an A&M fan. What would bother me is the fact that his team just fundamentally makes so many mistakes. Just on and on and on. It's just the little bitty things that throw a drive or a defensive stop off kilter. It's just, man, it's just incredibly.
The stuff David
it has
Cook
to be incredibly frustrating because you shouldn't be having that in year 2, much less what is he in year 5, 6?
6. You're 6. Yeah, you're 6. I mean, this was it. It reminds me. That's why I brought him up. Like David Cutcliffe was like the king of with the offense. Like he knocked out every little mistake possible that could be made to kill a drive when he took back over Tennessee in 06. I'll never forget that.
Yep, it was neat seeing Eric Berry out there, which leads me to this. I want you to fill in the message board with this, and it is today's tough question on the Big Wrap, brought to you by Harrell Group Security Solutions and the Hemp House. Today's tough question is right about now, I think. Yeah, let's go ahead and get to today's tough question. I've lost it. There it is. All right, I understand you're having trouble hearing today's tough question, so there we go. Sorry about that. The Caleb, here are my thoughts on or my question for you. James Pierce is the best Tennessee defender since whom?
The best Tennessee defender?
Yes.
Okay. Do you say going to be or already is?
Say going to be.
Okay, going to be. Yeah, I know where you're going, and I'm with you. He's going to be the best Tennessee defender since Eric Berry. I mean, I'm right there.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question he can be at that level. And you know how much I think of Eric Berry as a person and as a player, so I don't say that lightly. So some more comments. Daryl saying that Tim Banks for Defensive Coach of the Year, that defense is playing lights out. Well, he's playing lights out for a couple of different reasons. One, he has more depth in the front seven. Two, his guys aren't exhausted all the time. I'm impressed by Josh Heupel, and I know he may not have the same number of wins he had in 2022. Be sure and hit the like and subscribe button right now, please. But he is adapting with what he has, and to me, that's a sign of a great coach. He doesn't have a great quarterback. He doesn't have a great senior quarterback that's a starter. He doesn't believe that the other guy, the freshman Nico, is ready to play, yet he's making things happen with a defensive front that's very good. He's slowing the game down a little bit, which gives the defense more of a chance to rest. It's complementary football. And that's something that I didn't know if Josh Heupel was capable of, but he is.
Yeah, and that was the big deal of while Tennessee didn't score on a lot of drives, they moved the ball on a lot of drives, which helped their defense a lot. So in terms of coaching performances, Dave, where does this rank in terms of Josh Heupel's coaching? Is this the best coach game he's ever called?
It may be. If you take out the fact that he refused to play Nico at some point earlier in meaningful snaps to get him ready. But as far as a single game, yeah, it may be.
Yeah. The only thing I can maybe criticize is his indecisiveness on fourth down, kicking the field goal on 4th and 3, and then going for it on 4th and 7. But outside of that, like I thought he called it. Again, you're right. Heupel's having to go against every instinct he has, and he's never had to do that before. And this is what's happening for Tennessee this year is a major testament to Heupel's coaching. Now, will it translate to wins against Alabama and Georgia? Probably not. But Dave, I think that in what I've called consistently a transition year when you wait for Nico Iamaleava next year, I think you can live with 9-3 if you're Tennessee this year, honestly.
Well, not if Nico shows up at some point later in the year and is lights out. If Milton were to get hurt or opt out of the bowl game, as you suggested, and Nico's lights out, then you're going to look back and say what could have been. Maybe not fair, but that's a factor. Keaton and Thornton are underperforming at wide receiver badly. We need to cycle them with Cam Selden and company. In other words, guys that don't play. I think Thornton's already there, guys. I think
he played 2 snaps.
I think that ship has sailed.
Yeah, he played 2 snaps in the game, and one of them was a 3rd down slant that he dropped that another transfer, who I wasn't as high on as Dante Thornton, bailed him out of because McCollum Castles called it off a tip on a 3rd down. And so, yeah, it's he played 2 snaps. Speaking of tight ends, shout out to our guy Jacob Warren, had a touchdown, by the way.
He just keeps catching touchdowns. I've asked him if he would do like a big O sign, like with his hands. You remember like the old Alabama thing where they had for off the hook, but I haven't talked him into that yet.
Miami
We're
with the
working on
U.
that.
Was that
Yeah.
the U that remember when Derek Tinsley threw up the U when he scored that touchdown at Miami in 2003? That was great.
I do, barely. Daryl saying Joe holding Tennessee back, and immediately somebody agrees with him. Guys, I think it's just where I mean that's what it is. I mean, Tennessee is not going to play Nico by every source that I've talked to. It's just not going to happen unless Joe has like 2 disastrously bad games or gets hurt. So that is exactly what Tennessee is, Caleb. And Joe Milton's going to continue to hold them back. You can say glass half full, Josh Heupel's making adaptations to still continue to win games, or you can say glass half empty, why the heck isn't Nico playing? But guys, this is what Nico could have very well been in the offseason. We heard all this offseason hype about how he's worked on his accuracy and is not going to get a problem, not going to have a problem. I go back to SEC Media Days, and he was so uncomfortable talking about his accuracy that made me think that he was still a little uncertain about it. So, yes, I think Joe Milton is holding Tennessee back at this point. Elias says, truly believe Tennessee's run defense is better than Alabama's. They gave up 171 to South Florida. Probably going to be an ugly game again, but I like our chances. Well, I don't like your chances winning this sort of a game on the road. I might like it better if it were at home.
Well, I'm going to say this. Texas A&M's run defense is better than Alabama. And look what Tennessee just did to Texas A&M's run defense. And that's to me the story of the game, that that Tennessee was able to run the ball as effectively as they did against Texas A&M. I know Walter Nolan got hurt, but Walter Nolan was in most of the game.
Yep, no, he was. And we hate that it looks serious. We hate that for the Powell High School alumni of mine. Daryl saying the way the defense is playing, put in Nico, and we win the national championship. Maybe a little bit strong, but let me ask you this. Do you have a chance to win the national championship with Joe Milton at quarterback?
I don't know. I don't.
You don't.
So. You don't. And I'll also say this with Joe Milton. Here's the thing. The whole, usually you have the senior start over the freshman because of the experience, and even if he's not as good, he can be a game manager. You can't trust Joe Milton to be that. He makes mistakes that freshmen make, Dave. What mistakes could Joe Milton make? Or what mistakes can Nico Iamaleava make that Joe Milton doesn't make?
I mean, none. And I can tell you from what I've been told, he's going to get the ball out quicker, which will help accuracy and hitting guys in stride, which Joe Milton apparently cannot do at this point. Trevor saying that along those lines, Dave, you have to agree that Nico would be better. I thought it should have been an open competition before the season. I thought that Nico should have gotten meaningful snaps against UTSA in the first half. Should have at some point played. But what was the game that Milton was injured his knee for just a second?
Well, I think he injured it against Texas San Antonio, and then he had the knee brace against South Carolina.
Okay. The Texas San Antonio game, that would have been the perfect opportunity to put him in the second half and not raise suspicions that you like Nico more than Milton, because you say, hey, Milton was hurt. The game's sort of in hand. UTSA, run him out there in the second half. Those are still meaningful snaps. Trevor's saying this is a joke. This is where it starts to brew, Trevor, and I don't blame you. It's how quarterback controversies begin, because you got a guy that's really highly touted on the bench, and you got a guy that's still struggling on offense, and you've seen the whole offense change because of his inefficiencies. Trevor says, both of you, do you not think with better quarterback play, this game would have been a blowout? It would have been completely different. May have been a blowout, but they wouldn't have even gone into this game with the same game plan with Hendon Hooker or a really good Nico at quarterback. You went into this game saying you're going to have to win it ugly, going to take a couple of shots, may hit on them, but if you don't, then you're going to have to win what looked like it was going to be a 14-13 game at one point.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, I thought it was going to stay at 14-13. I'm not going to lie to you. I was shocked Tennessee got 2 field goals at the end of the game. But, yeah, no, it did look like that. And the funny part is You're right. It is hard to say because if they change the game plan for Nico, do the receivers still make plays? Look, there's still some issues at receiver right now that I don't think people are appreciating. But maybe that's because it is possible, Dave, on the other end, maybe we're being too hard on the receivers. Is it because they're not getting into a rhythm because they're just not getting enough balls thrown their way? That could be the case too.
I wouldn't argue with that if that were the case. Justin saying Caleb agrees Dave is on the inside and can't say what he really wants about Jay Milton, which I respect. Here's the other reason I can't. I've been a little bit softer on Milton since the season began is because, he's such a good guy and such a good leader from everybody that I talked to, including Cooper Mays and Jacob Warren on the Vol Report, which we'll have up on Sunday, that, man, I guess I wanted deep down as a nice person for things to work out for him. But I feel like that ship has sailed. I just don't know that he gets better in the middle of the season at this point.
I don't either. Unless there's a Jonathan Crompton renaissance in 2009, Dave, which you remember very well covering.
I do.
I mean, that is still the most inexplicable thing to me I've ever seen because Crompton struggled so much his whole career at Tennessee. And then the midway point of his senior year, just a switch flips and he balls out the rest of the year.
I can explain it. A lot of bad coaching that affected his confidence. And then a bad quarterback coach in David Reeves that was told to go stand on the sideline so that Lane Kiffin could work with him closer. That is exactly why Jonathan Crompton resurrected his career in the second half of his final year of eligibility. Daryl saying Jimbo, or Jumbo as he calls him, not worried. He loaded. I really think he brought in Bobby to be Texas head coach. I don't know if Bobby Petrino is going to be the next Texas A&M coach. Milton threw another pick today, according to Bolden. And I'm never going to be the guy that points to officials. But I thought the officiating again in this game was pathetic. And I think when it's been bad in Tennessee's football games, and I'll tell you the opposite, I think it's been bad against Tennessee. I think there have been 3 games where the officiating has been really bad. And in each incident, I thought they hurt Tennessee.
I think it's been horrible since the Austin Peay game. I haven't seen one well officiated game dating back to then. And I'm going to say this. This one was the most embarrassing look for the SEC. Tennessee Texas A&M was the SEC's primetime game, so they had their A-list officiating crew in this one, didn't they? They had to.
And I don't know how they rotate officials actually, because you also can't have gone to a school. There's all kinds of different variations, so I don't know that you have a true A team or not.
You would theoretically, though, maybe not officially, but you would unofficially have an A team.
You would know that old Joe ain't too good at them pass interference calls.
Exactly. And this is
I didn't mean CBS Joe Milton. Game. I mean, let's say Bobby the official.
This is the CBS game. And you're right. Now, I'm going to defend Texas A&M. They did miss a couple in Texas A&M's favor, too. There was a face mask on that last drive that was so obvious that they should have called where Max Johnson his face mask was grabbed. But yeah, Nimrod was interfered with once. I think Ramel Keaton was interfered with once and they didn't call it. I mean, they're missing a lot of pass interference calls. And look, I wrote this is crazy, Dave, because I actually wrote before the season starts, and you probably remember this, that Josh Heupel's offense is happening during a defensive renaissance in college football. We saw Nick Saban go get Tommy Rees and he's playing more ball control. Did they know something we didn't about pass interference calls weren't going to be called as much this year? Because that's what it seems like.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but perhaps. Daryl says that this defense will beat Alabama. Boy, when's the last time you said that? And it's possible because listen, you have to. Tennessee forced a turnover, I thought, with pressure, which led to the Gabe Judy Lawley interception. So their pressure forced a turnover, but they've still got a couple of strip sacks in them before the end of the season. I don't think there's any question about that.
Oh, absolutely. Now, Jalen Milroe is going to be the most athletic quarterback they faced to this point. This is going to be can they handle Jalen Milroe when he gets out of the pocket? They haven't really faced a really, truly mobile quarterback yet, to be fair. And so,
no, and they have had some gap integrity issues earlier this year. Justin saying we all know Milton is subpar. We just don't need him to lose games and have some type of threat of the deep ball in his legs. His legs were put on tape for Bama next week. And I guess with the option that he ran for 81 yards earlier in the season, they certainly should be on tape. You have to be concerned about Joe Milton as a runner. My question is, Caleb, should you be even more dedicated to Joe Milton being involved in the running game than you already are. I feel like there are about a half dozen plays in which Joe Milton either is a design run or has the option to keep the ball, pull, and keep. Should you be talking about a dozen? Should you be talking about double that? Even more Joe Milton on the ground.
Absolutely, you should. Absolutely, you should. Joe Milton should. I don't know if he doesn't want to do it, but it's funny. We brought up the crazy Cam Newton comparison at the beginning of the year, and I'm not. Look, he's not. He can't sniff Cam Newton's like stratosphere and talent, but Cam Newton ran a heck of a lot more than Joe Milton, and Joe Milton could at least run like Cam Newton could. He may not be able to throw like he could, but you could use his legs. I don't understand why they're not using his legs a lot more.
Yep. Elias says only way I expect to maybe see Nico if we lose ugly to Alabama and Kentucky. Again, from what I've been told, he would have to play really poorly in a couple of games in a row. And I mean really poorly, not kind of poorly, like he's been playing to this point. That's not good grammar, but you get my point, Caleb.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I think Joe Milton would. I don't think there's much Joe Milton can do to lose his job against Alabama. Now Kentucky comes, or you go to Kentucky and it happens, then you're having a conversation because Joe Milton says he doesn't lose in Florida. He lost. But Tennessee doesn't lose to Kentucky ever, anywhere. It doesn't matter where the game is.
Yep. Vols time. Need to use D. Williams on offense. I was texting Jimmy Himes back and forth during the game. He was in the press box, and he'll have a post-game column for us on Off the Hook Sports. So will Caleb Giroux. Caleb Calhoun already has a ton of stuff up my column as well. And, yeah, they needed to use D. Williams on offense. Caleb and I slightly disagree about how to go about that. He thinks that Squirrel White brings the same level. I get that argument, but I don't think either of us know for 100% right because D. Williams hadn't been on offense.
No, he hasn't. I mean, and again, Heupel's, what are you going to have him do? Again, Heupel doesn't usually get players the ball in open space and have them go make plays. That's not what he does. It's a vertical rushing attack or a deep pass downfield or a quick slant. I mean, it's not here's 5-yard catch, go make a play.
Hey, can I throw something at you totally off the wall that somebody brought up on our YouTube message board earlier this week and I was going to address? And this is going to sound like crazy talk, but I'm going to put it up there. Vols time, Gaston Moore probably would do a better job at this point. He's the walk-on quarterback. He is not highly touted like Nico. He is not experienced like Joe Milton. But could he step in? Could he have played against A&M every bit as good as Joe Milton did? He could have done the same things that Joe Milton did today. He wouldn't be as good as Nico, I don't believe, but he could do the same things. We're talking game manager type of quarterbacking here, and that's exactly what Gaston Moore could step in there and do.
How dare you, Dave? The work that Joe Milton puts in on throwing those little 3-yard screen passes. I'm sorry. I think Joe Milton's legs is the one factor. Look, you still have to respect it to a certain degree when Joe Milton takes off. And I don't know if you could do that with Gaston Moore. And that's the big difference at this point.
Yep. Trevor's saying, I know they aren't going to make a change. I just don't get it. I think they are. I think they like Joe Milton as a leader, and that's what they're scared of at this point. I think they thought that they could polish him as a quarterback, and that was the thinking in the offseason. Now, I think there's concern that they could mess with team chemistry. Justin says Florida plays harder than any team they face, regardless of how bad they are, and Alabama does too. There's a lot of truth to that, but Tennessee should have never lost that Florida game. If Cooper Mays is in there, they don't lose it. But that was also the worst coach game of Josh Heupel's career, in my opinion, as a Tennessee Vol. Maybe you saw the best one today. Dirty Higgins says Ollie Lane sleeps with a flag under his pillow. When you go back and look at it, Ollie Lane did play it really poorly today at left guard. But, man, him at center, handling the line calls too. Caleb, it's a wonder that Tennessee didn't slip up and lose another game to this point. They just didn't play anybody.
Yeah, they were lucky they had the easiest schedule through 4 games. This really explains why they lost to Florida and how much of an upgrade Cooper Mays is. That left guard spot's an issue. it's going to be an issue. You had Joe Mincy get hurt on the right side, but you have Dane Davis, and you can go to Jeremiah Crawford. And if John Campbell's not playing well, you can still go to Jeremiah Crawford. Right guard Javonte Sprackens has that locked up. He had that face mask, but he's an amazing blocker. Cooper Mays is Cooper Mays. I don't know who you put at left guard. Nobody can play the spot right now. Absolutely nobody. I mean, look, they have 3 highly touted offensive linemen coming in next year. This is rare, but what's the chance one of them sees the field as a freshman?
I don't know. Trevor saying the wide receivers are having to catch freaking bullets. It's harder than you think. He throws too hard. Again, it hits you in the hands, and football purists will say you should catch all of those. But he throws a very heavy ball.
That wasn't a bullet that Ramel Keaton dropped.
Oh, I got no problem. No. That was on Keaton.
Yeah. And also that Dante Thornton slant drop that McCollum Castles caught, that wasn't a bullet either. That was just Dante Thornton is not good.
Yeah, I got no problem with those. It was the one to Keaton on his back left hip that I had a problem with. That's got to be out in front of him.
Yeah, the accuracy on that is that I totally agree. I can't defend that. And look, you're not going to get the accuracy at this point. He's halfway through his 6th year playing college football. You can't fix the decision making. Dave, every reservation you had about the Ole Miss game is just it's right.
No, agree. And if we look to more comments, we have comment from Vols Time. What's up with Ramel Keaton? Well, I'll tell you, he's not playing very well right now. And I think too much was put on him last year. You had Brew McCoy. Again, he was the wide receiver 1, and he was pulling coverage over. So I thought it was much easier for Mel Keaton. I never saw flashes of athletic ability that made me think Keaton could be an all-SEC player. Not even close.
No, I'm going to be honest. I drink the Kool-Aid. I did. Just his catches and physical coverage last year were I was very impressed with him. And again, he was it's funny, Dave, you're the guy who covered recruiting, but I just couldn't believe that Ramel Keaton would struggle this much as a 4-star coming out of Marietta. And I mean, if we remember, Ramel Keaton was the more sought after star in that class, and no one thought Cedric Tillman would beat him out to become a wideout. Nobody did when Keaton arrived on campus. I mean, Tillman was a 2-star in 2018. Keaton comes in as a 4-star in 2019. And you're thinking when Jennings and Marquez Callaway and Josh Palmer go pro, you think Ramel Keaton comes in and you're like, thanks, but no thanks, Cedric Tillman. And it's not the reverse, but yeah, he's in his 5th year and you're still not seeing him play like a highly touted recruit he was.
Yep. We will visit with Spencer Riley on Monday to get his thoughts on the offensive line, but I bet he's not going to be real high on Ollie Lane. I would imagine that. Tracy saying, I think I'm about ready for Nico. Guys, I told you I had doubts about Joe Milton in the offseason. I wanted things to work out for him, but I think that's where he is. This, according to Elias, and we want to hear your post on the message board so we can get to more of them. Looks like to me, Milton hesitates with everything, including running and constantly getting the ball out late passing. Completely agree with that. The ball needs to come out, especially with this offense. I was watching a couple of other games last night, and there were some quarterbacks. Shedeur Sanders was one. He blew the game against Colorado. That could kind of float around like a Bryce Young, and he doesn't have to get it out when he hits his back foot. But that's the way this offense is designed, and I don't see Joe Milton ever doing that, Caleb.
No, I never see Joe Milton doing that, and his pocket presence is a huge problem. I mean, even on his sacks, yeah, some plays get blown up, but he doesn't know where to step in the pocket, and it's consistently a problem with him. And it's something that, look, Hendon Hooker, that was his biggest improvement from 2021 to 2022, and I felt maybe it was just about Cooper Mays being healthy. But Cooper Mays is healthy now, and Joe Milton is still having the same issues. So it's a problem.
Tracy saying, I went from Joe rest of the season. It's hard to watch. Or from Joe to Nico the rest of the season. It's hard to watch. And just hypothetically, Charles says, what would you think if Nico was the starter next week? Would you feel better about Tennessee's chances to win at Alabama with Nico at quarterback instead of Joe Milton?
I mean, I probably would. I'm not going to lie. But at the same time, look, there may be a philosophy that you're right. There's a leadership thing, and you don't want to split the team mentally, and maybe Nico's not there yet. You don't want to say Joe Milton's not making mistakes because he is making mistakes. I mean, he's not just game managing, Dave. He's like actually almost losing them the games and they're winning. And so that's what's so crazy about this. But so I can't really defend that. I think he just doesn't want to split the team. And I think Heupel has a lot of confidence in the talent around the team right now. And look, the defense is, we got to say it, the defense is really, really good. This is a really good defense.
It's a really good defense that I don't believe is going to fall off because of their depth in the front seven, and they make the secondary better. All the way out in Tulsa, Tulsa Vols saying Gastonmore was the best quarterback in spring practice. I would do series interchanges with Gaston and Nico. If I'm going to play Nico, I'm just going to play Nico.
Yeah, let's stop doing who balls out in spring practice. Okay, Cam Seldon was the best running back in spring practice. So I don't really care who the best was in spring practice.
Yep. Patricia saying defense saved us. Small right D Williams as well. Does Tennessee win this game if they don't have that special teams exchange where the punt was down inside the 1 yard line and then that forces A&M to punt? Tennessee wins 20-13. D Williams has a touchdown punt return. Do they win if not for that special teams exchange?
No, I don't think they win for that at all. I mean, that's the only reason Max Johnson threw those interceptions late, trying to make a play. He wouldn't be doing that. They'd be running it to try to get out of there with a win. So no, they don't win that game. I said it, the punt, and I'm going to have a column on this later today, was the turning point of the game. Jackson Ross is a heck of a punter. Tennessee's punter you again with him.
Yep. Caleb, are you on board with keeping Joe the starter?
Yes, and largely just because you don't want to split the team, and I think you can do what you need to do in a transition year this year, and then you could have Nico fully ready to go next year. Well, and we don't know how good Nico is under the lights when the game starts.
No, and I think you keep the conservative route as long as championships are at play. If you wanted to take the aggressive route, you should have done that before the season. Tennessee did not do that. This, according to Noah or Nathaniel, just not the third, Vols did what they needed to do for the win. Bama is going to be hard, but I'm not counting us out. I don't either. I don't count Tennessee out of any game, including Georgia, although they continue to play well, because I think the SEC as a whole is down. And I think when you have a strong front seven defensively, you can win games that you shouldn't win.
Yeah, that changes everything in college football is the line of scrimmage if you have that. So I totally agree. I think that Tennessee could really win any game going forward. For the record, guys, those wanting to have Nico start, wouldn't be the first time Tennessee switched quarterbacks with a pretty good record against not 2000 Clawson, Alabama, but against a very good Alabama team. Go back to 1989. Tennessee was 5-0 with Sterling Hinton. They bench Sterling Hinton and go to Andy Kelly at Alabama.
It is interesting to me that there is a quarterback controversy on our message board, and people are not coming away feeling good about the win more than they are feeling bad about Nico and that it's not going to be good down the stretch. I warned you. I wanted to be wrong because I think he's a great guy and a great leader by everybody I talked to. Just telling you, accuracy is something innate. Larry Bird was a great shooter. You can't go out there and practice enough to be a great shooter. Certain guys just have that innate ability, and I think accuracy is the same thing. I could go out there and practice for a year shooting free throws, and I'm not going to beat Reggie Miller at a free throw contest. It's just not going to happen. He is Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, the Big Rap, brought to you by Harrell Group Security Solutions, making your children safer. Tell your school administrator, avoid tragedy, and go to harrellgrp.com. That's Harrell Group Security Solutions. Tell them it's important. These are not just regular old security guards. These are highly trained individuals that want to make your kids safer, and also the Hemp House. So the Big Orange Crunch on Sunday only. Go to Hemp House Chat with 2 T's, Hemp House Chat with 2T's.com. It is 50% off Sunday only after the Vols win. The Big Orange Crunch. And certainly you need to trust the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Tennessee wins 20-13. Championships hope still alive. But Joe Milton, questions continue. For Caleb, I'm Dave Hooker. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.